Welcome to News Express. My name is Chidera Esom. 2027 Tussle, Supreme Court to hear African Democratic Congress and People's Democratic Party crisis suits. This morning, in Nigeria, the conversation is no longer quiet, and it is no longer cautious, as it is loud, it is direct, and it is deeply unsettling because two major opposition parties, the People's Democratic Party and the African Democratic Congress, are now openly accusing the ruling All Progressive Congress and the federal government of orchestrating their internal crisis, not influencing, not benefiting from, orchestrating. And the alleged objective is as stark as it is controversial, to ensure that these parties are too fractured, too litigated, and too disorganized to present a viable presidential candidate in the next general election. This is no longer routine political disagreement. This is an allegation of systematic interference at the highest level of democratic competition. So the question this morning is unavoidable. Are Nigeria's opposition parties collapsing under the weight of their own internal contradictions, or are they being deliberately dismantled from the outside? To understand the gravity of this moment, one must begin with the pattern that has led us here. The crisis in both parties did not erupt overnight, but their escalation has been unusually rapid, unusually consequential, and according to opposition figures, unusually convenient for those in power. Within the People's Democratic Party, disputes over leadership legitimacy, internal conventions, and factional control has spiraled into full-scale legal battles. Court rulings have not merely corrected procedural errors. They have struck at the core of the party's structure, nullifying decisions and empowering rival factions. Each judgment has resolved tension, but multiplied it. Within the African Democratic Congress, the situation mirrors this instability, leadership tussles, conflicting claims to authority, and swift institutional actions, including the recognition or derecognition of party officials, have thrown the party into disarray. Again, the consequences have been immediate and severe. Now, taken individually, this could be dismissed as symptoms of weak internal governance. Political parties, after all, are no strangers to factionalism. Leadership struggles are part of political evolution. Courts are often called upon to interpret these rules, and resolve disputes. But what happens when two major opposition parties are simultaneously engulfed in crises that threaten their very existence? What happens when both sets of disputes escalate to the Supreme Court at the same time? What happens when both parties begin to tell the same story? Because that is what it is imagined now. A shared narrative, a coordinated accusation. Leaders within the People's Democratic Party and the African Democratic Congress are not merely defending themselves against internal challenges. They are pointing outward. They are alleging that the ruling All Progressive Congress, backed by the machinery of the federal government, is actively fueling this crisis. The claim is as follows: that state institutions are being used, direct or indirectly, to amplify divisions, legitimize certain factions, and delegitimize others. That legal processes are being accelerated or weaponized. The administrative decisions, particularly those involving electoral recognition, are being deployed in ways that deepen instability within opposition ranks, and ultimately that the goal is not simply to win the next election, but to shape the conditions under which that election takes place. It is a serious accusation, one that, if proven, will strike at the heart of democratic integrity. But even as the accusation is made, it demands scrutiny. It demands questions, many questions. Is there evidence of coordinated interference, or are these interpretations of coincidence and consequence? Are institutions acting independently, or are their actions being perceived through a lens of political distrust? And perhaps, most importantly, why are these accusations gaining traction now? The timing is critical. Nigeria is moving steadily toward another electoral cycle. The selection of presidential candidates is not a distant concern. It is an imminent process for opposition parties. Unity is not optional at this stage. It is essential. A divided party cannot conduct a credible primary. A litigating party cannot rally supporters. A factionalized party cannot present a unified candidate to the electorate. So if, as alleged, these crises are being sustained or intensified to prevent that unity, then the implications are profound, because it will mean that the battlefield of Nigerian politics has shifted. It is no longer just about campaigns, manifestos, and voter mobilization. It is about pre-election disruption. It is about ensuring that the opponents never reach the starting line in a coherent form. And that raises a fundamental question. Can an election truly be competitive if one side enters organized and the other enters fractured? Yet, there is another layer to this story, one that cannot be ignored. Even if one entertains the possibility of external interference, does it fully explain the depth of the crisis within these parties? The People's Democratic Party has a long history of internal division. The People's Democratic Party has a long history of internal divisions, leadership struggles, regional tensions, and disputes over power-sharing arrangements are not new phenomena. These are structural issues that have persisted over time. Similarly, the African Democratic Congress, though smaller, has faced its own challenges in consolidating authority and maintaining cohesion. So the question becomes more complex. Are these parties victims of external manipulation, or are they vulnerable institutions being exposed under pressure? Because vulnerability matters. A strong, well-organized party with clear rules and disciplined leadership is far more difficult to destabilize, whether internally or externally. A weak party, on the other hand, presents opportunities for disruption. If fractures already exist, they can be widened. If disputes are already simmering, they can be escalated. So where does responsibility lie? With those allegedly applying pressure, or with those unable to withstand it? And what does this mean for the role of the judiciary? As the Supreme Court prepares to hear these cases, it finds itself at the center of political storm. Its decision will not only determine legal outcomes, they will shape political realities. If it rules in favor of one faction, it may restore a semblance of order, or it may deepen perceptions of bias. If it rules against them, it may be seen as upholding the law or as reinforcing the narrative of interference. In such an environment, neutrality is not just a principle. It is a challenge because every decision will be interpreted, analyzed, and politicized. And beyond the courtroom, there is the electorate. Where do the Nigerian voters stand in all of this? They are watching parties that seek their mandate struggle to organize themselves. They are witnessing accusations that suggest the system itself may be tilted. They are being asked to trust a process that appears increasingly contested before it has even begun. Can trust survive under these conditions? Can confidence in democratic institutions be sustained when political actors themselves question their integrity? And what happens if that trust erodes? Because democracy is not sustained by laws alone. It is sustained by belief. Belief that the system is fair. Belief that the competition is genuine. Belief that outcomes reflect the will of the people. If the belief weakens, the consequences extend far beyond any single election. So this morning, Nigerians stand at a critical junction. On one side, there is the argument of internal failure, that the crisis within the People's Democratic Party and the African Democratic Congress are the result of poor leadership, weak structures, and unresolved rivalries. On the other side, there is the accusation of external interference, that the All Progressive Congress and the federal government are actively shaping this crisis to secure political advantage. Between these two narratives lies a tension that defines the current moment, and perhaps the most uncomfortable possibilities is that both narratives contain elements of truth, that internal weaknesses have created openings, and that those openings, whether intentionally or opportunistically, are being exploited. If that is the case, then the challenge facing Nigeria's democracy is not singular. It is dual. It requires stronger institutions within parties, as it demands greater transparency and accountability from those in power. Because without both, the cycle will continue. Crises will emerge, accusations will follow, trust will erode, and elections will be contested not just at the ballot box, but in the courts, in the media, and in the public imagination. So as the day unfolds and attention turns to the Supreme Court, one must ask not just what the judgments will be, but what they will mean. Will they resolve disputes or merely pause them? Will they restore confidence or deepen suspicion? Will they enable the opposition to regroup or confirm fears that the political playing field is fundamentally uneven? And perhaps the most critical question of all, when the time comes for Nigeria to choose its next president, will voters be presented with genuine alternatives, or will the outcome of battles that were decided long before the first vote was cast? That is the question that lingers this morning, and it is a question that will not be answered easily. Thank you for watching News Express. My name is Chidera Esom.